Hey there, welcome to episode 49 of the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program. I am your host, as usual, Dan Hugo, recording late, right at the end of February 1, 2024. It's a Thursday here in Vegas, and most places. And solo, as always, looking for some guests and interesting topics to discuss with them for 2024. In the meantime, today's topic will sound weird. It's a bit of a mouthful in the title. Ecosystem heterogeneity has to do with how a place like Greater Vegas, the city of and the surrounding areas of Greater Vegas, is known to be a rather transient place. What happens when you mix different people from different cultures? And I don't mean ethnic cultures so much as work cultures, entrepreneurial cultures, innovation cultures. Different places have their own culture. That's the theory anyway. So what happens when they decide to move to Vegas and see what happens? So, like I said, it is known, our Greater Vegas oasis, for a rather transient population. You will often hear from people that they are not surprised if someone just disappears. They up and move. When you speak to real natives, there's always a sort of a surprise, like, oh, you were actually born here? I have some census data that I will let you spelunk if you really want to. We'll get to that in a second. But the census is interesting when it comes to capturing mobility and when people move. There's data from 2021 about where people moved from, as in intra-state, intra-county for Clark County within the last year, but that's tricky because, within the last 2 years, it probably goes up. So we'll get to that in a second. What happens when you are thinking about being a part of a tech scene or an entrepreneurial ecosystem or a startup community or whatever, and you wonder, who am I sitting next to? So first things first, the usual in your audio program source, whether you get this on Amazon Music or wherever, Spotify, hopefully you're able to track down the episode description. I'm very close to, I think I've mentioned before, I have 4 different weekly programs I produce. So we're looking to get some self-hosting set up. And I mean, anybody can just throw up a page. This is part of a larger vision, which I'm sure will be the topic of several episodes. But yeah, the show notes, I'm trying to have some relevant links and information so that I'm not just talking out of nowhere. I do have some links to check. That's what the internet is for. So if you check the links in the show notes, in the episode description for this audio program, you will find, first of all, the usual self-plug, buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo and ko-fi.com/DanHugo. Buymeacoffee.com especially has a profile page that I've put links to all of my audio programs and other projects. I will look to fill that in so it looks a little bit better. And as we get the websites and the pages and the content publication for the different shows, as in Let's Innovate for Vegas Foundation Innovate for Vegas Foundation has Let's Innovate for Vegas. So that's a nonprofit. So that's sort of separate. That's volunteer. But Cafe Genius Impresarios, cafegenius.org, FFS Talk will have, there's nothing there, ffstalk.com, and quaglingsand.com for quaggling sand. Pretty straightforward. Buymeacoffee.com has current links to the Spotify site for the different episodes and programs and whatnot. We'll take more ownership of that so we can publish things in a usable way so that it's easy to navigate, or easier. Personally, I think Spotify kind of messes up the show notes. I'm not really happy about that, but we'll see. So visit those. You are under no obligation to purchase anything. You don't have to buy anybody a coffee, but do note that my productions are powered by coffee. So money's in, go to coffee beans, coffee devices, coffee. Next up, 2 links. Basically, one is a book, which I did not know existed. In fact, I did not know the name of this concept. I have played the game, which I will get to in a moment, but the Barnga, there's a Barnga book, barn as in B-A-R-N, barn, and then G, so Barnga, one word, B-A-R-N-G-A. It looks like, I didn't delve into this, but they look like Thai names for the, I think there's a co-author, but it looks Thai, and I will get to this in a moment when I tell the story, but that all comes together and makes some sense to me now, many years later. But I have played this game that I will talk about, which, so when I looked it up, I had to look up the name by describing it, and as though I was throwing a dart at a dartboard 1 inch away, bam, got the name right away. And then there's an example. I found several universities and other educational outlets that have their own description of the game. So somebody in each of these, you can search it. If you look for Barnga rules, you'll see a number of places that have it listed as, part of education equity programs, cultural sensitivity, etc. So we'll get to that, but you can find the rules pretty easily, or you can get the book or both. And so I have a link to the University of Michigan version of the rules, and it's an interesting game. I think you can only play it once, and after that you're like, oh, okay, I get it, hopefully. And then I have a link to the U.S. Census data website, data.census.gov. I'm not linking directly to the data. I did do a little bit of checking on demographic information for Clark County in Nevada. The perception is probably that there is more moving, but the census data, again, is for 1 year. There's a 5-year, and I know I've seen other variations on more current data that was down to the city level. This is county reporting. Probably I could dive into city, but we're not really looking at mobility rates at the moment. If you are willing to accept the notion, as I believe most of my compadres would here in the greater Vegas area, that there's just a lot of transients, that people tend to come and go. People tend to be from somewhere else. They tend to have just gotten here. They've been here for a year or two. I have said to someone, I think they said, are you local? And I said, yeah. And they said, how long have you lived here? And I said, 10 years. And they said, yeah, that counts. So I think when you speak to someone who's been here for a long time, maybe longer than 10 years, especially natives, I think they're more sensitive to that, but that's not, that is relevant to this topic today. But more precise data could be captured as part of our introspection program that will be coming soon. The joy of solo pursuits like this. So let's get on with it, shall we? The ecosystem. I've talked about the Entrepreneurial Innovation Ecosystem many times. This is episode 49 after all. So there will be many more in the future, as there have been in the past. Started out with the entrepreneurial ecosystem, which I think is a common topic. People talk about that a bit. I personally, on reflection and analysis and conversations and various audio programs, solo mostly, but I've come to the conclusion that there are probably two axes that are perpendicular, like X and Y. So you could say there's the entrepreneurial ecosystem and the innovation culture that are present in a geographical region. I will leave open the possibility for a virtual ecosystem and culture. If everything were to move online during like a pandemic or something, could you support, or could there be support for, and I don't mean people supporting, I mean like infrastructure and progress and effective outcomes, etc. So could a virtual ecosystem and culture thrive? That's another thing to investigate. But essentially, the basis for individuals and groups to form startups and launch entrepreneurial endeavors and to be inventive and innovative, think outside the box, novel solutions to particular problems, and all of this for fun and or profit. So the ecosystem, a word often probably overused without spelling it out, although I did recently during the CES week, it was actually on the first day. Yeah, it was the first day, January 9th, 2024. was at CES. I attended a panel talk in the Eureka Park section at the startup stage, and it was about entrepreneurial ecosystems and funding. How you enable these things in that ecosystem. So the panelists gave their versions, and the 4 pillars that I refer to frequently matched basically with theirs. So it's possible to break them down a little bit. And in fact, I've sort of taken to, I could probably go with 7 if I broke these down, because I do have education and talent pool, for example, as one of the pillars. I did that though, because I used to just say education, but it's not essential that you have students coming out of your educational institutions to form the talent pool. The talent pool could move into town. There could be, and of course, you kind of couch it initially as the tech sector, but the talent pool could be people who come into the ecosystem or the geographical area. They may or may not be the result of local education, but a strong education base, access to educational resources, whether it's traditional public school, K through 12, college, junior college, associate degrees, bachelor, postgraduate, doctorate program, all aspects of education. There could be boot camp, but also vocational schools. There's a variety of ways. So that essentially it's the thing that powers your talent pool or enables growth. In order to grow, you often need people that will participate in whatever you're trying to accomplish. So whatever the particular entrepreneurial endeavor is, if there's a need for talent, got to have talent. So I'm going to stick with my simple one-liner. I'm not going to do that for all of the four. But education and talent pool, government and infrastructure. So government builds things and then gets out of the way. I include also regulation. So government regulation and legislation, tax, funding, grants, whatever. And then infrastructure, wires, roads. Culture and communities. Cultures and communities are not necessarily the same thing, but I think they are often conflated. I've taken to separating them. I used to just say community, but I think cultures and communities, and those are both plural, are critical. That's what we're going to talk about today, to the ecosystem. So that's the third pillar. And then the fourth one, the ubiquitous, always on everyone's list, even if they have 100 different items, access to capital. It's what makes the world go round, apparently, unfortunately, but that's the way it is. So when you, or anyone, when anyone converts a particular biological ecosystem, like a desert, to something else, like a fun economy oasis, doing that requires the existing ecosystem, replacing it. You take the existing one, you replace it with the new one, and all that it takes to do that. So roads, electricity, you're running wires and cables and pipes and building buildings and having air conditioning and so on and so on. So in order to convert one ecosystem to another, in this case, making it more comfortable and attractive for humans, it takes a certain amount of energy, time, of course, energy, literally energy, and funding, right? Materials, those are all kind of energy. So you have to put into the system. It takes time. You have to put things into the system. So it's going to be concrete, it's going to be asphalt, it's going to be wire and pipes and water and electricity and all that. And then you have to put in, so you can just call it inputs, I guess, and funding. You got to pay for it, right? So there's no free lunch. That's a common saying. There's no free lunch. And it is possible, if you were to stop maintaining, because you're driving, if you have a home in the house where you live in it, if you have a house in the desert, you have to keep the air conditioning running. If you turn off the air conditioning, no matter how well insulated, practically speaking, you can probably get around this with impractical levels of insulation, but your home in the desert is eventually going to heat up in the summer. It's going to cool down significantly in the winter at night. So you have to continue to inject energy into the house, whether it's heating or cooling. Got to run that heat pump or the chiller or whatever. burn some wood, whatever it is. You have to continue to do that to maintain the status of your new ecosystem on top of the old one. So in order to maintain, you must continue to insert effort, funding, energy. You have to inject it into the system, so to speak. So you have to continue putting in, no free lunch. And so that is sort of important. That will always come up. So I just want to do a quick refresher on where I am on the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem. And then, like I said, the orthogonal culture axis is more what we're talking about today. And that means, basically, to summarize that, if you have the talent pool and you have the infrastructure, you have all these things, and you have no people, or if you have people and they just don't care, they don't want to make use of them, you can say you don't have an innovation culture. So if you have an innovation culture, you will tend to have people who think, I've never done that before. I could do that, or I could try doing that. Entrepreneurs kind of need that mentality. You don't necessarily need to invent something brand new. You don't have to be an inventor to be an innovator, but you do have to sometimes think, there is no coffee shop here, and I'm going to change that, right? So you have to think, you have to have that mindset. And if you have a lot of people around you with that mindset, there's a general buzz, if you want. There's a sort of energy. And this is why everybody thinks they can be the next Silicon Valley. They just, we'll just do that. That was an evolutionary cultural development over the course of since 1947 to about 2001 and the dot-com bomb. Everything collapsed. So that's a good run there. That's about 54 years? 53. Call it 50 years. So things just don't happen. So like I said, the greater transient Vegas has people coming and going. And I don't think anybody would argue that. So I'm going to play a little bit fast and loose here with some numbers. Again, I went to the U.S. census data, census website, data.census.gov. And it looks like the data that's reported, there's a ton of data there. So I didn't want to go down the data path today, although it's obviously very interesting. And I think for our purposes, it would be useful to know who considers themselves to be in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So we're not looking at a county administrative boundary. We're looking at more of a realistic, practically obtained ecosystem boundary, right? Where are people actually believing that they're part of the entrepreneurial ecosystem? And that's also important for what we're talking about today. So the county of Clark has approximately 2.3 million people. That's essentially the number that's used today. Sometimes you'll see over 2.3 million. Some places you'll see it's about 2.2. So 2.3 seems to be in the middle of some oscillating total. Of that number in 2001, 10%, I think it was split almost evenly between men and women. There was the only two genders in the census data, so take from that what you will. So about half and half were from somewhere else outside of Nevada. I'm sorry, 10% were from Nevada, and 90% were from somewhere else, so outside of Nevada. I think that's approximately right. Subject to debate, so let's just use that and believe it might be true, and we'll go from there. It is difficult to assume that a person you meet anywhere, if you go to a networking meetup, if you meet someone in a coffee shop, anywhere, it could be anything, any sort of meetup, any type of gathering, any encounter, any engagement, someone in Vegas who you are talking to is likely to have been here for years, but not too many. So what I found, and again, if you're you've lived here for 10 years, then you're a local. So there's always a little game to be played about, I've lived here longer, therefore blah, blah, blah. If there does seem to be, though, a critical sort of transition. I will say it's about 3 years. I could be wrong. So if you live here for more than 3 years, the likelihood that you'll live here 10 years goes up. If you have only been here 1 year, the likelihood you'll be here 9 years hence is probably much lower than it is in the third year, and so on. I don't think anybody would argue that. Depending on why a person moved here, and that's an interesting survey in general as well. According to that census data, about 100,000 people moved, and this is again half male, half female, moved from another state to Nevada and specifically to Clark County. So I think it was like 98,000 and about 50-50. And so in 2001 data, I believe that's published in 2021. Did I say 2021? Whatever I said. 100,000 people had moved in a year ago, or maybe within the last year. That's why some of these numbers are nice to talk about, but they are worthy of more research in general. So about 5% of the population is new to the state of Clark County, is new to the state at any given time. That's an extrapolation, but let's say it's true. And a tiny number of people, according to that same data table, 5,000-ish, are people who have moved from other counties, maybe from Pahrump or Washoe or wherever. So they've moved into Clark County they've already were living in Nevada. So a very small number. So most of the transitions within a particular year are out-of-state moves into Clark County. And I'm going to assume that the second year, or people who moved 2 years ago, you subtract the previous year. So the people who moved 2 years ago specifically will probably be a larger number, because some of the people that were 2 years. So wait, let me rephrase this specifically. 2 years ago, people who moved into Clark County and were here for a year, but then moved away, it'd be interesting to know what that number is, right? So I think, because we'll call it about 3 years, I think there's a chunk of population there that you'd kind of have to figure out if they did live here, and this is important because you may have encountered those people 2 years ago. They're not here anymore, and I'll get into that in a moment. But yeah, so the transient nature is not totally visible when you do the reporting that they've done here. What you'd really want to know is who moved into the area, who moved out of the area over a particular interval. So anyway, this is important, again, because of the transient nature and because of the heterogeneity of our ecosystem, and more specifically, the cultural component, the innovation cultural component. And in fact, we could just broaden that to just cultural component. And again, not the ethnic culture, not the regional culture, but more of the entrepreneurial and innovation culture. That'll make sense, I promise. Gotta scroll through the notes. So here in Vegas, we have a fun economy culture. I think that's fair to say. I had done some research about a year ago. Our education system has traditionally been aimed more at training employees. So job skills, not necessarily entrepreneurial skills. Obviously, we have a very strong culinary union, for example. There are strong vocational schools aimed at cooking, service industry in general, bartending, etc. So our fun economy extends to all manner of hotel management, resort management, gaming, etc., etc. So someone who's looking to be active in the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem, who has been in Nevada for at least a year and is probably most familiar with the fun economy, that is, they are in some way aware of tourism, gaming, professional sports, conventions, and entertainment, they may be starting their own business of any kind, and it may be a completely new thing, or it may be completely familiar. They may be with what they're doing and what they're doing it in one of the fun economy components or pillars, or maybe completely new, and you never really know. So the person you are speaking to, if they're doing something in the fun economy and they know about it, could be something that they already know the nature of it. So the point is, in the fun economy realm, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of opportunity for novelty and innovation. So you may be encountering someone with a brilliant idea, but they just got here, or they're doing something that they've been thinking about for a long time. Anyway, so fun economy, the longer somebody's been here, the more likely they're aware of that. That's interesting, although that's not really the point of what we're talking about today. It's a component, but it's not really the point. Cultural norms in this context can vary wildly. So if you're a native Clark County person, You've been surrounded by the service industry and tourism and big business and all that the whole time. Smaller businesses, not new. So anything from a small restaurant, small bar, small retail, small, I know, what's the word for estheticians? Hair, nails, right? Is that it? Am I right? So all DJ, small business, solo business, obviously taxi, transportation, limo, all manner of entertainment. There's just a ton of small and solo business opportunities. A lot of it centers on tourism or the general fun economy. If someone is new to the area, they may be acclimating to that notion. And again, they might be trying to be innovative and entrepreneurial in the fun economy. And again, they may be new to the area. So there's some things, there are components of this part of the grid, if we're gridding, so someone who's new to the area will bring from where they used to be a different view on all of these things. And that will, you can see that sort of, you can see them become acclimated or acclimatized, depending on how you want to use that term, over time. So what I'm getting at is the people that move here who are not as familiar with the fun economy, who want to work in the fun economy with some novel idea, will bring with them their expectations, their interaction notions, etc., from where they came from. Okay, so there's Silicon Valley, there's the Rust Belt, there's the Farm Belt, there's the Northeast, the financial sector in New York. New York is very cutthroat. Some parts of the South are a little bit more laid back, etc. So everybody has a stereotypical notion. There are people from these different areas. When you encounter them, you will almost immediately recognize a difference in the way they approach a meetup or a gathering or discussion, a collaboration, a negotiation, etc. So I'm throwing around stereotypes, but you will encounter a difference, whatever it is, when someone is new to a new area. That's probably reasonably. We can take that with unanimous consent, right? So what any one person might expect or even demand of their new home and the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem in which they find themselves is probably based on their previous experiences, the areas of focus that they're in or looking to be in, and where their entrepreneurial bent is. All these things can vary wildly. So if you're from Silicon Valley, let's say, since everybody talks about that so much, if you move to Vegas from Silicon Valley and you already were being an entrepreneurial leaning person, you were aspirational at least, you were surrounded by entrepreneurial people, you've seen how fast things can move, you've seen people meeting up and gathering, you've probably overheard conversations at coffee shops, etc. So when you come to a new place, you bring with it your entry into this new place some familiarity with where you were, and you can compare to where you are. And as people start to ponder, like, okay, what have I gotten myself into? Especially when you talk to someone who's from a similar area or a similar background, like, oh yeah, I'm an entrepreneur 3 times over, right? 3 exits, if you will. From Utah, and I just moved to Clark County. Oh, I'm from Silicon Valley. I have 10 exits. Those sound silly, but there is a person here in Vegas. Oh, I moved here from LA. I have 56 exits. You're like, okay, sure. The interesting thing, though, is when you have people from other places, it's like comparing salaries. It's like comparing weather. That doesn't mean the same thing here as there. That's been my experience as well. So there will be a little bit of a culture shock in my experience. And that's where we will get to Barnga. So like I said, I played this game. I took a leadership program. There is a leadership Las Vegas. I think it's very expensive. I don't know if it'd be worthwhile. I took the leadership Sunnyvale program in the Bay Area in Silicon Valley. It was a great class. It was a really interesting group of people. And because Sunnyvale is a small city, at the time it was about 120,000. I think it's grown to around 150 by now, maybe more. Small city, but yeah, you tended to know people. There was somebody from the Department of Public Safety in there, So in my house where I was living, when that caught on fire, I had the experience of interacting with people from DPS, including this person who was like an assistant chief or deputy chief, I guess. DPS was triple trained, all that. So you learn about these systems and how they all work. So the culture that I was in was not only small town feel, right? 120 is not a tiny town, but it's small, relative. And I was interacting with people in this leadership program that were involved with city government and, business, local business, and so on. In your daily travels, you can encounter these people, but a lot of people either in Sunnyvale or in Silicon Valley in general were very entrepreneurial. I've often told this story, and I probably will again. One of my classmates and I from Leadership Sunnyvale said, hey, there's no local media here. So we started a podcast network called Radio Sunnyvale, and we had multiple shows. We'd go to city council meetings. We, all kinds of things where people around us were like, sure. Like I've mentioned here, I don't really have guests a lot because it's hard to get people. It was so easy to find people who wanted to hang out on a podcast and talk about local business or government, talk to city manager. Yeah, come on in, bring your microphones. Let's set it up. Let's do it. Right. No, almost no friction because our culture of innovation was such that like, oh, I know you come to, city council meetings. I see what you're doing in the community. You're doing something interesting here. This is Silicon Valley after all. Come on in. So the culture there, the entrepreneurial bent, the nature of the actual community of people, geographical community, right? So not everybody was into startups, but you could walk into a restaurant, you walk into a coffee shop, you could see someone doing their thing. Maybe they work for the police or DPS department, et cetera. So a lot of interaction, a lot of kind of understanding of the nature of this Silicon Valley thing that was going on for so long. So you could have certain expectations from that. Okay. So one of the Saturday sessions of Leadership Sunnyvale, guy comes in, he teaches cultural sensitivity. I don't know if that's the word, but that's what it was, right? So how do you, in your interactions locally or traveling, how do you learn to recognize when you're not doing it right, when you're a guest in someone else's world? And I mentioned earlier the Thai name, definitely look Thai or possibly, I don't want to it could be Malaysian, but probably Thai or Lao maybe. But the book, Baranga, his wife was Thai. I remember him saying that because I have a penchant for Thai food. So I've been to Thailand, etc. So one of the exercises, he says, okay, everybody sit in table groups, right? Groups of like, you try to divide it up evenly. So say it was like 5 people per table, 4 tables or something. And he has these sheets of paper and decks of cards. So he puts a sheet of paper on each table, or maybe one for everybody. I can't remember. Decks of cards. He says, okay, once you sit at your table, no speaking, silence. So it levels the communication playing field. That's a little spoiler. People are seated at tables. Each table has the rule sheet. There you go, ready to go. So everybody reads the rules, no speaking, the game commences. So you play a couple of rounds of a card game. Imagine playing like Crazy Eights or War or, nothing super crazy, like not Bridge, although maybe more like Go Fish, but there are various rules, if you have a thing, you pass it to the left or you do whatever, or you put a card down, whatever it was, right? Pretty simple, easy to play. Couple of hands later, he says, okay, still no talking. One person from each table stand up and then switch. And I can't remember if it was like a rotation or just random. Doesn't really matter. You join the new table and start playing again. Still no talking. And immediately and universally, so all tables, the first, they deal the cards or whatever the second step is, like immediately there's this, what? Like total confusion and mayhem. And everybody goes, wait a minute. And the person who has joined the new table is obviously in the minority. So they're confused, but then their behavior triggers everybody else at the table. Like, what are you doing? Like, I don't know. What are you doing? And so it's just a universally kind of fun and funny, but very real reaction, because you see the rules at each table are different. And that's how the world works. So when the person joins the new table, they're playing with the rules from where they're from, not the rules from where they are. And comedy ensues. And the take home, of course, is that when you are familiar with the rules where you were and you move to a new place, then you have certain expectations, and you will learn very quickly that you're not right. You are incorrect. And it's what you do about that and what the people around you do about that that can make or break the 1 to 3 years ahead of you. So how does this apply? And again, you can play this game yourself. You can find various versions of rules. You can make up your own rules. And it doesn't have to be cards. It can be just about anything. The lack of being able to speak, though, is alarmingly effective. Facial gestures or facial expressions and gestures and the nonverbal exclamation of like, huh? Is very effective at communicating when words don't do. And hey, guess what? If you're in a place with a different language, that can happen. But also if you're in a place where things like replying to emails or responding to a text message or actually showing up when you say you will via an RSVP or accepting a meeting, these are communication norms that are almost in line with, normal language communication skills. Like, how does this game work? Are we playing a game where you reply to my emails? Hello? So the rules can change depending on where you are. And that's kind of an indicator of a cultural difference that you will get to experience and adapt to, or throw your hands up and bail. So if you have aspirations or perhaps nascent entrepreneurial bent, I like that word bent, you may be looking for some answers to questions. Like you may be in the new area and you're like, I need funding, or how do I go about getting a business license, or who do I talk to about attorneys, or I need some accounting, I need some bookkeeping, I need some tax filing advice, I need attorneys, or whatever. You need different resources in this new place, and I need to know where people hang out, what's the cool coffee shop, where can I get the free Wi-Fi, where's the meeting space, I need a virtual office, I need a co-work space. The list continues. It goes on and on. And, I'm looking to start a food truck. I need a kitchen I can rent to do some prep work. Which bartending schools are, and then where should I go hire people? The list is endless. And when you're in a new place and maybe you've moved because of a tax advantage, Nevada has no personal income tax, and business arrangements here are fairly good. Not quite Delaware. Maybe it's Wyoming is better. But anyway, so you've moved to Nevada for whatever reason. Cost of living might be lower than where you're from. I found that to be true. So now, okay, where do I go? And you will probably, I think this is not happening quite as much, but a year or two ago, again, we're speaking today on February 2nd, 2024. So 1 year ago, 2023, you probably would have been told, contact SBDC or SCORE, or you'd be pointed to one or two particular people who are sort of the highest profile and most visible, even though as part of an experiment, I did all of those things, and I will say none of those were good advice. Unfortunately, because in the absence of really good information, you will get information that was passed along with a shoulder shrug. And so if you're in a culture that doesn't really have a good answer for you, they'll just give you the answer that sounds right. This is true on the internet too, so no surprise here. So you're basically going to be pointed to people or agencies that have halos placed over their heads, and they're like, oh, these must be the people to talk to. They must know what's going on. And they may not. So they may not have any idea what you need. And then you'll be left to your own devices. And this is generally true. I've talked to many people about this. Welcome to Vegas. Good luck. You'll need it. You may have been sitting at a table with some experiences and expectations, right? I'm kind of making a throwback to the barn guy. So maybe you were in Silicon Valley, maybe you were in Austin, wherever, and you moved to a new table in Las Vegas, and the game is completely different. See what I did there? So I've heard this tale from many people, and I've said this myself because I recognized this myself when I moved here from Silicon Valley, and because of my various interactions at different places around the world from my Maker Innovator days, and hopefully more days to come. So there's kind of a culture shock, as I've said. So you get here and you're like, people don't show up to things and nobody responds to anything, and the list goes on. They told me to go to this place. This is sort of a inside baseball, but familiar locations and relative times are very popular. So yeah, just go down to the historic school downtown, and you're like, I don't know where that is. That actually happened. My other favorite one was, because at least it's the historic 5th Street School, and the entrance for parking is on 4th Street. So there's a little facets of potential confusion there. But then there was the Learning Village. That was part of the downtown project. It was a portable classroom school of sorts. Now, I could tell you if I was directing you to go there, like, go to the Learning Village tomorrow. And I sent you that email at midnight. You're like, tomorrow? Is that today or tomorrow? I'm not sure. So I could say, go to the Learning Village. It is on Fremont next to the container park. Because guess what? Which is at, I think 4th? No, not 4th. 7th, 6th, 7th? Can't remember. When you're a pedestrian, you don't think about these things. Next to the container park. The container park, or across the street from, just some landmark that was on a map, because the Learning Village was not called the Learning Village on a map. So I spent a long time one day saying, I don't know where this is, because I was in a culture of familiarity in that respect. And so newcomers were not indoctrinated with useful bits of information, like this is what that means, this is where that is, etc. So the familiarity, the expectations are very different. Like we all have a map in our pocket. Why can't you just give me an address or a intersection or something? So familiar locations, like, oh yeah, it's down by the thing. And you're like, but I don't know where the thing is. I can't be by the thing. Don't know where that is. So that's just one example. And as it happens, the downtown project brought a lot of people from different places. So they were establishing a little micro culture of sorts that was an amalgam of multiple people from different places, all with different expectations, all slightly confused when they got here. I talked to a lot of people in those days in my travels. So it was anything from culture shock to literally a rude awakening to this is not going to work. And a lot of people left. These are all true things. And when we do the Downtown Project retrospective, which is another solo project, so guess what? When you're a solo project, everything takes a long time. But that's okay, because we're examining the past, and it is not going anywhere. So when you are here, new to the area, and again, you could be from anywhere, and you don't have to be coming to Vegas. When you change, though, that's the thing. You have to wonder, do you expect a straight answer to questions? Like I said, are they going to give you this generic call to SBDC? And I would recommend you don't. Did you expect a collaborative environment where you'll get useful, thoughts and opinions and discussion, or just a lot of shoulder shrugging and solipsism? Did you hope for a good advice from any people? Again, who should I talk to? Where should I go? Call SCORE, which I do not recommend you do, by the way. SCORE in Clark County. Did you, personal experience, allegedly, did you have relevant experiences to share and no takers? Like, hey, I know the answer to that. Hello, I know how this works. I've encountered that countless times. Are you doubted by people who don't know anything about you? Again, many, 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 many times. These and more are possible, right? So when you come from a culture where people are open to ideas, they're open to collaboration, they presume a level of competence when they enter into a discussion with you. I always tell my coffee shop story. I would sit in a coffee shop every day for a couple months, and I would get there at 9 a.m., put my headphones in, earbuds. They had 25-cent refills. Sometimes I would buy food there, but I would basically just pump quarters into the cash register, do my refills, and work all day and grab a snack or whatever. The guy that ran the place, Kenny, and his wife, whose name I don't recall, just nice people. Like, yeah, sure, have a table. It was never packed. I was never taking up a table that could have been used by someone else. So I was, the place was full of people working, but it wasn't full, if that makes sense. So yeah, I would sit there all day. Well, very quickly, you run into people with a similar take, and you'll get anything from, hey, can you keep an eye on my stuff? Go to the bathroom or something, to, hey, what are you working on? Or, hey, I see you here all the time. Where do you work? Or what do you do? What's, you want to take a break? Do your thing. So you have a social engagement with the people that are the usual crowd every day. And in short order, you are now co-working with a disjoint group of people. And I talked about this in a previous episode about co-working, bring back co-working. You're not co-working in the sense that we're all working on the same project, but you're co-working in the sense like when you go to the gym, you're in a room of people that are working like you are, and they have some familiarity. Like if you need a spot, the people in the gym know how to help with a flat bench press or something. So you're like, hey, can you give me your opinion on this thing I'm designing or building or writing? Yeah, sure. Because there's some context there. There's some continuity. There's some collaborative dust in the air. So there, you form a little micro community of coworkers, literally. So if you are in a place where there's that flavor and you move to a new place where people could not be bothered and they have their earbuds in and they don't take them out and they're there doing their thing at a similar coffee shop, place is packed, people are bickering and talking and meeting and chatting, and you're getting squeezed in. Okay, I'm just trying to do some work here. And they don't care. Nobody talks to you. You don't, nobody is, I'm too busy. Everybody's in their own little world. So right there, that is a thing that happens. And you may find it difficult to find non-transactional meetups. There may be less of a willingness to think outside the box, like, hey, can you give me your opinion on this? Oh, I don't know anything about that. Like, yes, but you're a human and I'm building a thing that humans should be able to use. Like, oh, but I don't know anything about whatever. I will say, this is my absolute subjective judgment. There is simply a lack of innovation culture here, such that you will need to look, you will need to quest, you'll need to seek out like-minded, no matter what you are thinking, no matter what you're working on, no matter what your particular cultural background is as far as entrepreneurial innovation, you will need to seek out people. They will not be generally available. And here's a little fun fact. People that spend a lot of time going to meetups, they are just going to meetups. In the Vegas area, if you want to meet people who are really doing interesting things, they're busy doing interesting things. You really got to seek them out. They may go to a meetup now and then. Like, hey, I didn't see you at the same meetup every week for that. Well, I'm busy. I'm trying to launch my startup. So there's a certain chunk of our population, maybe it's the people that have been here more than 3 years, who don't stick with the norms, I guess, or don't give in to the machinery. And who knows, maybe they have a good idea that they want to share with you or vice versa, and they might have a good opinion and good feedback and whatnot. But I have found it's that culture difference. And, side note, this is why I say very often, you cannot simply sprinkle money on top of anything and say, oh, it's the next Silicon Valley. This is a cultural evolution, a cultural emergence that takes time. It can be cultivated, but it does take time. It comes from the students and the educational component of the ecosystem. It comes from the talent pool that moves into town, those 100,000 people or so each year. I don't know I think that's a net 100, so whatever. It comes from the dust floating in the air, as I said. So there's a lot of things going on. Not all of them are completely objective. And when you have an absolute mix of culture, again, not ethnic, not regional. You know what we're talking about. When you mix those up, it's not unlike when you have people driving. You ever have people who, when they're going to merge onto the freeway, they want to merge in front of traffic, and then there are other people who want to merge behind traffic, and then there are other people who just wait. There are other people who just gun it and hope for the best. You never know for sure who you're going to encounter until you encounter them, and you go, oh, I guess they're going to go for the front, or they're going to come in behind me, or whatever. This is definitely true, and in fact, this is one of the reasons I'm talking about this today. I think it was yesterday, a day or so ago. As usual, I was out and about, pedestrian, rocking the pedestrian, and there are people that take the right of way, and there are people that believe they should direct traffic. So they will wait, point, honk, flash their lights, get upset. I'm waiting for you to cross the street. But as a pedestrian on the sidewalk, when you stop, you're not entering an intersection, you're not crossing, you're just standing on the sidewalk. You can do that. And some people from some places will accept that, and they'll say, oh, you're not moving, I'm moving. Other people will say, I'm going to predict what you're doing, and I'm going to direct you to do it. And I'm going to wait, and I'm going to honk, and I'm going to yell. Vastly different. And this really occurred to me because I was in China one time, several times actually, crossing the street with someone, a local. We were crossing the street, and there was a person on a bicycle, like pulling a little trailer with a bunch of stuff on it. Think like a stack of pallets, but like wooden pallets. It looked like a bit of a load. He was towing with his bicycle. Not a motorcycle, a bicycle. And then there was a car coming behind that person. So as we were crossing the street, there was a median. So I paused, and this other person was like, no, grabbed me and like dragged me. And now we had to move a little bit faster because I had paused. So that's another simple example. The culture there is you move, don't stop moving. So if you continue your path and the bicycle and the car behind that person, just keep doing what you're doing. So take responsibility on both sides of the transaction. So if I am walking across the street, the people that are approaching assume that I'm going to walk across the street so that I finish the walk and don't get in their way. And I'm going to assume that they're not going to speed up and try to hit me. I hope that was true. So when you change that, you throw off the balance. But when you're here, you never know what you're going to get. So you have to adapt in real time, or you get hit by a car, or you piss somebody off, or both. So that it completely applies to anyone trying to do anything entrepreneurial here in the Greater Vegas area. And I think it's worthy of much more examination than it gets. I think there's this presumption that you move to a place like anywhere in the Greater Vegas area, city of, or Clark County somewhere, Henderson, etc. Wherever you end up, you're gonna mingle around. You're gonna run into people in different areas from different places. You'll meet people from Silicon Valley. You'll meet people from Utah. You'll meet people from Austin, etc., etc. 1 year, 10 years, native. You'll meet a whole mix. I will say from my personal experience, I lived in Silicon Valley for 13 years, 14. Something like that. Always running into people from other places, right? Not unlike Vegas, a lot of people in Silicon Valley were from somewhere else, whether it was from somewhere else in California, United States, global, a lot of H-1B visas and other visas to allow the workforce to grow beyond reasonable proportions. So you'd always run into people with different culture. But here's the funny thing, from what I gather during my time there, people move there maybe not from a similar culture, but with a similar mindset. So I think the acclimation was a little bit quicker because you're moving into a strong innovation culture. So when you get there, this is my presumption. You move to Silicon Valley from somewhere else. It's like 1997. You got a job at what would become one of the FANG companies. I used to drive by Netflix in Los Gatos when it was in one building. You move there and you're already there. Like I want to be entrepreneurial, or I want to work at a startup, or I want to work at a big company and then meet a bunch of people and make my own startup or whatever, right? You have the mindset. So when you get there, you're like, oh, that's cool. There are people that are more of what I was hoping for than what I was hoping for. So ultimately, you are probably culture shocked in a positive direction. Like, man, I was hoping there'd be some meetups, and there's like meetups in meetups, and there's brilliant people that are always interested in, yeah, give me your resume, or here's my resume, or hey, what you're working on is cool, whatever. There's always this buzz, this energy. And so you might have totally different expectations when you move to a place like Las Vegas, and there may be other places like this, but I'm in Las Vegas right now, so there you go. You are probably going to be a little bit shocked in the other direction. And the number one thing that gets me, and I've said this before and I'll say it over and over again, and you don't have to respond, of course, is the complete and total lack of tendency to respond. Any sort of messaging, any sort of, hey, you're going to answer that email? No. I didn't think there was anything to say. I didn't want to. Well, I asked you if you wanted to meet have a meeting. Oh, yeah, no. They used to joke about that in, people in California, they flake. They just don't show up for things. So that may literally be a cultural import, cultural appropriation of that behavior. But it is something to be aware of, because when you move into this entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem as it is, and I will continue to say for the next 10 years or so that it needs work, it will be very different from a Silicon Valley or various parts of Utah or Austin. Excuse me, voice is going to give. It will be very different. The question is, will you adapt to it? Will you adopt the contagious failings, in my opinion? Will you not reply to emails? Will you blow meetings off? Will you not be as helpful because why bother, et cetera, et cetera? Or will you buck the trend, and will you infect people with your culture and insight and expectation that you bring with you from a stronger, more successful, more enabling, more uplifting entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem from whence you came? So what do you do next? As I kind of just went over, acclimating is probably the best, right? Like, you should try to fit in. Connections are needed. You're going to need to find out some of the answers to the questions. As I said, you'll at least get a starting point, so you can't completely shun everybody. You can try, but some sort of acclimation will be in order. You'll eventually need some second order introduction, so knowing people, so you at least know who to talk to about talking to the other people you need to talk to, etc. Is a good idea. So you're going to have to do some cultural adaptation. Whether you bring your culture and sprinkle it on top of everything, or whether you give in and accept the state of affairs, which I think is a bad idea, my opinion. If you tend to be responsive and collaborative and generous with your time and experience and so on, you really got to find other people that are like that and try to develop a critical mass of people you can match, I suppose, from a culture of innovation perspective. I think if you spend too much time with people who don't see that in the slightest, or they perceive a entrepreneurial ecosystem or a culture of innovation, any part on that plane, the two axes there, anyone who doesn't see what that could be as you might see it, if you moved here from Silicon Valley, you might have some notion, some imagination for what the shape of that, bounding region in the plane might look like. Somebody here from LA, or somebody here from, I'm not trying to denigrate anyone, but someone here from Oklahoma, not Tulsa, that doesn't count. But so let's say somebody from, I don't know, somewhere else, somewhere not Austin, not Research Triangle, not anywhere in Utah, not Denver, not Phoenix, Chandler area, right? So someone who's moved here for opportunity, if they can bring with them a willingness to make the most. And you, if you feel similarly about your time and how generous you are with it and so on, if you start finding people like that, you will be better off than even if you're that person and you go to the usual thing. Oh, go to this meetup and go talk to that person, go to SCORE, go to SBDC. If you don't know what to expect and you have expectations and they are so completely not met, you may find yourself very frustrated. So I would absolutely recommend seeking out people, groups of people, individuals who have a similar mindset, possibly similar background, similar aspirations. Doesn't have to be tech. Sometimes you just want to start a food truck or open a bookstore, start a consulting company. But people have a similar mindset who are not meeting with you to turn you into a client. And finally, I will simply say, if you are talking to someone and they sound like me with this voice and your response is, it's like that everywhere, and you shrug your shoulders, that is part of the problem. The status quo and entrepreneurial innovation are exact opposites. If you find people who are willing to accept and move on, you're talking to the wrong people. And that is where I will leave it because my voice is already decided. The show is about to end. Thank you so much for listening, as always. I would love to have a conversation, with multiple people, about this very thing that we've talked about today. We being me, myself, and I. Hello. So if you are interested in this topic, if you are new to the Vegas area and you're listening to this audio program, thank you. If you are a native, if you're somewhere in between, if you're thinking about leaving, I'd love to know why. The really important part, though, will be the introspection. This is the Downtown Project retrospective. We'll look at the Downtown Project in the past. The introspection will be an opportunity on an ongoing basis to consider some of the same things we learned from the past and see how they apply to the present. Guess what comes next? Future. George Santayana. Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it. So we'll try to find the good parts and repeat those. On that note, I thank you again for listening. My voice has had it. Thanks for putting up with it. I'm talking to myself and to you. Thank you so much for listening. And we'll catch you later. Don't forget buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo for other projects and so on. Check the show note links. Website's coming. Other cool things coming. Thanks.